Welcome to episode 193 of Trek Live. In this week's episode, we're going to be talking about some more Star Trek, obviously, but family themes in Star Trek. But before we get into that, Bill, how you doing this morning?
Doing well. Looking forward to this. It's our last show of the year, which is always bittersweet. Another year down. But I like this topic. I think it's one of those topics that kind of gives us a chance to touch on maybe all the shows, a bunch of the shows, wide net. I'm really looking forward to it. How are you doing? Yeah. Cool. So, as we are wont to do, the rewatch recap, which is on pause for you because you were done.
Yes.
Check out 2 weeks ago's episode, or 2 episodes ago, more than 2 weeks ago, when we did our. If you haven't yet, I debriefed Dan
Recap.
on his full rewatch experience. That was a good conversation. I recommend everybody check that out, especially as we're going into hiatus for a few weeks. If you're looking for some Star Trek content over the holidays, I feel like that's a good one. But for me, I picked back up. I didn't watch anything last week, but this week I watched first 3 episodes of season 6 of Voyager. So that's Equinox Part 2, Survival Instinct, and Barge of the Dead, which I think is a really good run. I think season 6
nice little run.
Starts with a bang, with some pretty ambitious episodes, and pretty melancholy episodes too. They're pretty kind of downers, all 3 of them. Equinox is obviously a pretty grim story with a pretty dark conclusion. It takes Janeway to some really dark places. Survival Instinct is a really kind of sad story about these lost souls who have to choose to live linked for the foreseeable future or disconnect and maybe last a month. It's kind of a really good episode, but a downer for sure. And then Barge of the Dead is a whole vibe.
Heavy, really depth. Yeah.
Yeah. Very existential, very good. I've always loved that episode. I feel like it's maybe a little divisive in some corners, but I've always been a big fan of it. So off to a good start with season 6. I think it really kicks off well. It's a good season. I'm looking forward to getting into it. And only it's the first time since TNG's 5th season, so quite a while ago, where I'm only watching one show.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, we're watching Discovery every week, and
true, we got that too.
That's true.
There's some other stuff mixed in for sure. But the other part of this that's gonna, I think, become a little bit of a staple, at least for the next few shows, I guess, coming back up to the new year as well. I'm gonna take your survey responses now.
Yes.
The one that's open on Twitter right now is Enterprise Season 1. I'm looking for top 5 lists, favorite episodes from individual seasons of Star Trek, and kind of putting together those responses into a chart and figuring out which ones are the most popular, at least in our social circle. And you're up. What are your 5 favorite episodes from season 1 of Enterprise?
5 favorite season 1 episodes of Enterprise. First has to be Broken Bow. I think that it's up there as probably the best series premiere. Second, I'll go with the Andorian Incident. You guys know that I really do love some Andorians, especially in Enterprise. For 3, I'll go Shuttlepod 1.
Yep.
And then, where is it? I'll go Dear Doctor for 4. And then, I don't know. There's the middle of the, not the middle, kind of the middle of the pack of this episode. Episodes. Can't can be pretty strong.
Remember the emphasis on favorite.
Yeah.
It's always that fifth one.
It's always the fifth one. It's always the 4 through 6. I feel like is actually would be tougher for me at least to pick. Some of these episodes. I'll go Desert Crossing. I like the simple kind of away mission setup and some cool. I like their get up. I guess their away mission desert kind of flexing their muscles on kind of the production value of some things, which Star Trek at times doesn't get to, unless we're talking about Discovery, but
right.
We don't usually get to flex our different uniform iterations, so it's nice to see that in that episode. So I'll say Desert Crossing.
Also the episode that provided us all with Trek Ranks theme.
Yes, exactly. So that's we had to highlight it there.
I see Jimmy 77's in the room. I don't know if I'm connected with you on Twitter, Jimmy, or if you're just kind of this through YouTube. So if I haven't collected a response from you yet and just don't know it, feel free to throw your 5 favorites in the chat, and I will take those responses.
Yes.
And make it part of the survey. I would appreciate it. But I guess for now we should get right into it. Oh, real quick, I'll just say that you're pretty for your responses. Just I usually tease a little bit. I guess the last few times we did this, there are a couple heavy favorites in this with the responses so far. You probably guess what those two are. Way out ahead.
Yeah.
And then 3, 4, 5, 6 are kind of within striking distance of each other. There's 2 decently out ahead in the 3rd and 4th spots, but there are a few lingering episodes that are, within striking distance and could pass them with the right set of votes for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So not as competitive as other seasons have been because there are such heavy favorites out ahead. Sometimes that does not happen, but this season it definitely has. So usually these come out on Tuesday evenings. Usually put out like a last call on Monday and give it 24 hours, and then usually around Tuesday evening Eastern time. Check out Twitter and the chart goodness and final poll will be. All right, I think we should get into the topic of the week.
Let's do it.
Yeah, so I feel like we could go in a number of different directions with this.
There's a couple different directions. Yeah. I think how this topic kind of came to be is I feel like, especially around the holiday season, not just, but just these last couple months have been kind of hitting on some major holidays. So I think Bill and I were just feeling we wanted to do something that touched on this because, like Bill said, there's a few different ways you could go. You could go there's family aspects in the traditional sense of we're related, but also there's this other, at least for those are the two that I kind of think of when I think of this kind of topic. But it's there's 2 different ones where it's like it's you are actually blood related, but also there's this family dynamic, not just with 1 or 2 people, but the whole crew. That's a bunch of different examples that I think we'll get into shortly. But am I wrong, Bill? Is that kind of what you're kind of thinking with this topic?
Yeah. I think there's 2 definite tracks. Star Trek definitely has a wide array of episodes that deal with blood family characters, reconnecting with members of their family, their parents, their siblings, children, kind of across all the shows. And then on top of that, I've always kind of made the case that I think that the thematic link with all these shows, the thing that they're all kind of about is found family. Finding family wherever you go, and choosing your family. Basically, that all these crews evolve into familial unit. So our cast of characters make decisions as if they are, for all intents and purposes, a family. I feel like that's the common link from TOS through Discovery and beyond. That it seems like that's the thread that all the shows pull on, keeps them linked. So those two tracks are distinctive and they offer different moments and episodes, I think, but I think both are worthwhile. And like you said, I definitely echo that. You would kind of stumbled into this thinking of like, well, what's like a holiday-ish kind of theme that we can kind of end the year on if we're kind of wrapping up right before Christmas. And we touch on these kinds of things a lot through other topic discussions, these family themes and that idea that all the shows build on that idea of the found family, choosing your family. And I feel like it's high time for us to maybe crack that open and talk about it for 45 minutes or an hour and see what comes to mind as like the hallmark moments to sort of sell those ideas and what comes to mind on both those fronts. So I guess like maybe to kick it off, like when you think of like these family ideas and Star Trek family themes, like what kind of comes to mind most for you? What in either lane? Like when you just think of Star Trek and family, what sorts of things pop to mind for you?
I think I'll do both. So maybe the blood family side of things. It's for me. It's the Crushers. I come from a single parent type of family, so that's the first one. It's in TNG. It's early TNG, so that's that type of dynamic, like single parent, gets touched on in Deep Space Nine as well. But that's the first one for me, and then same with Worf too. There's a lot of familial aspects in TNG, especially with Data too. He's got his brother. He's got his father, creator, however we want to spin it. The found family stuff really comes to mind with Voyager. It's and I don't even know the exact reason why. I think maybe the traumatics of their situation maybe brings them closer together. Like that's
their circumstances for sure.
Their circumstances for sure, but they're friends. The friendship grows. Obviously, there's great friendship on the ship, but I think it's different when you have so much writing on each other and being able to just interact with each other, and you build these bonds that I feel like I'm not taking away from any other show or any other crew, but the bond is just a little bit stronger because of their circumstances. They only have each other to lean on. So to kick it off, those are my two first that kind of come to mind. Bill, what about for you?
Yeah, I think the Crushers and the Siskos from the Blood family side of things come to mind. The Next Generation, I think, because of the nature of that show, Voyager, obviously everybody's disconnected physically from their blood relatives. So I think that's why that shared feeling of chosen family comes through the most prominently in Voyager. I think that's most hit on in Voyager, from a like just upfront, non hidden, just a very prominently featured theme of that show. But in the Next Generation, when I think of the Blood family stuff, I think one of the things that kind of links all those characters together is if you think about all of them, they all come from difficult family upbringings. Like they're all coming from
families. Yeah, I was going to touch on
dysfunctional,
that.
Or like single parents. In the case of Worf, like an adopted family, or just challenging upbringings and conflicts. Like Picard's had conflict with his family as a young person,
which we get in the episode Family.
Yeah, very much so. Right. Yeah. So there's and TNG's kind of loaded, especially in the back half of that show. I think in season 7, exploring a lot of these ideas with different characters having sort of challenging family backgrounds. So I feel like that's something that kind of really drives home in that show, that all these people come from really difficult blood family situations, or maybe no blood family situations, and this is their family, each other, and that's why they're together for so long. And we go to Nemesis all these years later, and they're still kind of hanging together, and you can't lose each other because of that. So the Next Generation really feels the most rooted in exploring the blood family stuff. Where Voyager, I completely echo you on that. I think has really chose to explore the chosen family, the intermingling, the intermixing of all these different people together, and kind of all of a sudden forming this essentially family. I think of episodes with kind of the idea that came to mind initially for me when we started talking about doing this topic was I recently watched 1159, which is not one of my favorite episodes.
Same.
But the end of that episode, that's an episode that really does deal with blood family and your perceptions of your ancestors, and what how we relate to our family histories, and our perceptions of all those things. And Janeway's ideas and assumptions get challenged, and just kind of down on that. And at the end of the episode, her chosen family, her found family on the ship, kind of rallies around her, and they create a holiday, and they take a picture together, and it really leans into this idea that this is her family in this moment, and probably forever. So that's a moment at the end of that episode that really feels appropriately linked to this topic for me, at least.
Yeah. Which in Voyager, there are some characters that struggle with like their family side and their situation stuff with I'm not in this an episode that comes to mind for me, and it kind of echoes what I talked about at the beginning of this, is the episode Real Life, where the Doctor gets to experience a very traumatic event and have that kind of familiar aspect of trying to go through something like that. And with Voyager, I think they go through so many situations like that. I think it really brings them closer together.
Real Life is a great call. I agree. That episode always really resonates with me. I think the idea that the Doctor experiencing that loss is what kind of brings him closer to the crew, because the entire crew is dealing with that sense of loss. They've all lost their connection to home and their family, and anybody they loved before finding each other on this ship. And in this situation, it's the common bind that all these crewmen feel, minus the Doctor up until this point. He's the one person on the ship
who kind of that's all he's ever known.
Relate. Even Neelix, who was found in the Delta Quadrant and comes from a very different place than everybody else who's on that ship.
Yeah.
Starfleet or Maquis comes from a deep background of loss and trauma. And,
big time.
He relates to the crew, I think, because of that, and finds comfort in being around people who relate to that feeling.
Yeah.
And the Doctor was the one person who kind of couldn't relate on that level, and until Real Life. So that's another one for sure that I think really.
But I mean, if you think about it, he gets to grow up with these people like you would with a family, and grow with, and that's maybe another, and we can tie into some other shows, but that's also an aspect that I've known where the growth of the character is similar to how I would grow up with siblings and with parents, and with different family members, and work through things and help give life lessons and things like that. So I think that's definitely a mark of other shows, particularly not just. I mean, I feel like a lot of the characters in Star Trek do that, but I feel like particularly outsiders like the Doctor, like Spock, like Data, like all these. A lot of the shows have a staple outsider, quote unquote, type of character. So I think we get that, especially that familial aspect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Jimmy77 mentions in the chat his favorite non-blood family relationship is Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, which I think might be most prominently explored in Star Trek V. I honestly feel that way. Like, I think that's the moment where they kind of confront that relationship head on. And there's the dialogue at the campfire scene when they're talking about, they spend all this time together stuck on that ship out there doing this and that, like doing their job, and then they get leave, and what do? They spend it together. Like, they wind up just kind of going off on an adventure off duty and out of uniform, but together still. So if that's not like a familial connection, I don't know what it is. That's not just work friends. That's not colleagues. No. That goes way deeper than that. If that's what you're choosing, and the one thing that movie I think kind of does well is it pushes that to the forefront and allows those characters to kind of talk about it and explore those feelings. It would, in the face of Spock being reconnected with another member of his
family,
not blood family necessarily, but sort of half, like the thematic yin and yang of that. He's being confronted with his long lost relative who he really has nothing in common with and can't connect with, while he has these people who are very different than him who does connect with. And that connection is kind of what saves the day at the end of the movie, their ability to stay true to each other. So yeah, kind of talking about the things that work for me in that movie in the face of a lot of negatives as well, that are well founded. But I think that movie really does, because of the nature of TOS being so episodic and one adventure to the next, and that it's a lot of that is. I think a lot of those vibes come through in the performances and the relationship of the actors more than the writing, if that makes sense. Because they're not telegraphing those themes on the page the way that some of these other shows, I think, do.
Yeah.
But undeniably there because of Shatner and Nimoy as far as Kelly's performances.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be a true Trek Live episode without Bill trying to shoehorn a Star Trek V positive take.
Yeah.
No, but... to be honest as well, one thing that I get from that movie is that and I could be way off basis here, but I generally think that those three actors and those three people actually generally have a friendship like that, and so that's also bleeding onto the screen as well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that certainly helps. I mean, that
I'm not trying to dog Star Trek 5 at all.
No, yeah, absolutely. That helps.
Yeah.
And it always seemed to be the case, at least.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of going back to that as well, Jimmy also mentions like the fact that they risk their lives and careers for each other. I think in like Star Trek 3, the fact that they're willing to do what they do for Spock, again, we've talked about, I think also really drives home that they're more than colleagues and coworkers on the ship. Even beyond the top three, Sulu, Uhura, Chekhov, Scotty all go along for that ride too.
Yeah.
And feel, deeply connected, and that serving on those 5-year missions in deep space on the ship together, in senior roles would do that. And I think that's baked into the fabric of all these shows. That's a natural progression that would happen in these kinds of situations, especially when the people that you're putting into these situations and on these deep ships into deep space for years on end. Yeah. If those people come from broken families or, challenging upbringings, I think it's easier for them to find each other and link up. That's, filling those voids.
So yeah, there's a bunch of examples, and I like that it's not just with the ship that we're on. Like, we get some stuff with Riker and the Pegasus and things like that. But also stuff with Picard, on other ships that he's been on, other crewmen that he's been on. Like this, it's so big. Like you said, Bill, it's so baked into what Star Trek is. It's just kind of amazing to think about in my headcanon, because I feel like Picard has an Enterprise family, but he also has like the Stargazer family. You know, and then he's dealing with his family stuff at home. Like it's such a relationship, a jam-packed relationship with a lot of people. So I just find it interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's another aspect of it too. We're just kind of poking in for however many years the show ran, and at this point in their careers. But a lot of these characters, seemingly, off screen and beyond the time that we're with them,
mm-hmm.
or before, like in the case of somebody like Picard or Janeway, had these other relationships that we never knew on their previous ships, and somebody like Harry Kim, seemingly, would have future. So that if
hopefully
that's
it gets promoted one day.
Hopefully one day, yeah. So yeah, all kinds of headcanon stuff you can do, to flesh that stuff out even more.
Yeah.
With this, we haven't mentioned Deep Space Nine too much, other than like the obvious with Sisko.
Yeah.
Do you think is that what comes to most mind for you, the Sisko relationship along these lines with that series, or
yeah, I think so. I think there are some other examples. I think there's some aspects with the Dax character. I think it's more than friendship there. I think there's some. I don't know. There's more. I feel like deeper friendships on Deep Space Nine, but I think again they do like similar to Voyager. I think through the traumatic experiences they go through, they make that bond to more of a family aspect, but. Yeah, I think for Deep Space Nine, it's really, at least early to middle Deep Space Nine, you get that family aspect with the Siskos and kind of dealing with other families, like, so, yeah, I would say that for Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I think the different flavor for me with Deep Space Nine is you get things like, unlike in Voyager and really in The Next Generation too, in Deep Space Nine, you get actual families as part of the fabric of the show too. Like you have
the O'Briens, and his
kids, Sisko and his son, and then eventually Cassidy. Like there's more domesticated life happening along the seams of Deep Space Nine that I think gives it a different flavor. The relationship's a different flavor than with Voyager is, for example, or what The Next Generation is, with at least the characters we're dealing with. The Enterprise D has families on it, and Beverly, like you were saying at the beginning, deals with her blood family, with Wesley at the beginning of the show being there, and there's familial, like actual blood family things really woven into the show. But as the series gets going, you're dealing with people that are kind of operating in a vacuum on that level more than on Deep Space Nine. Picard doesn't have
much more variety.
And his family, really, the people he would turn to for those kinds of things are his crewmates and officers. Where on Deep Space Nine, Sisko's got Jake, O'Brien's got Keiko. It's I think that the maybe it's because it's a space station and it's a more
you have more variety.
It lends itself more to
on a Federation ship. You're kind of not in the same. You're in the same boat technically. You're on the same ship, but you're on different paths of in the same type of career path. Whereas on Deep Space Nine, you've got shop owners, you've got members of different species. It's just a greater variety, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's just if anything, it's a more accurate representation of the station where it you do have that variety.
Right.
Whereas like the family themes kind of get toned down in places. So. Not a negative for Deep Space Nine.
The bound family themes.
Yeah.
Like the blood family themes are because of Sisko and.
Exactly. I mean, the blood families.
More nuclear family.
Yeah. The found family is not where I maybe point to maybe a deeper friendship that we get to see, and then also romantic feelings as well on there. But yeah.
But there are things like I think at the end of Take Me Out to the Hollow Suite after their game, they're all together in the bar. Like that togetherness and the intimacy of their relationships and forgiving each other and like working through problems, like that. Those there are notes of it throughout the show here and there. Bada Bing, Bada Bang, where they all kind of come together and do a thing together, operating as a whole. You know, like you could chalk that up being a crew and a a cohesive set of coworkers, but I think the show and the characters do a good enough job of selling that it goes deeper than just straight up.
Again, maybe that's like
work relations.
Their actual relationships kind of bleeding on screen, which I love. So, yeah. What about Enterprise?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the note that was there from the beginning that really, especially if the show could have kept going and gotten, because I think they kind of lose this a little bit with season 3 and Xindi, but the dinner table kinds of conversations that you get, most notably with Archer, Paul, and Trip, I think tons of those episodes in the first 2 seasons, especially the first season, I feel like open and sometimes are bookended by scenes with the three of them doing a very family thing, sitting around a dinner table, and kind of talking about their day and talking about what they're going to go do that day or the next day or whatever the mission's going to be. That's a definite familial, vibe. But even there are other moments where Archer dines with Reed and with Mayweather, and like he brings his crew in and they bond over essentially dinner table chat. And chatter, and I think that's the tool that they had that was kind of unique to that show that I think built a lot of that on a foundational level. But,
the dinner tables for me as well. It feels like such a big family theme. Like when you think of your family, that's a lot of different moments at the dinner table. So I think that's you hit the nail on the head there, Bill. Which it's I love it because it's so simple, but it speaks volumes to their relationships and what they deal with, and I love the banter between all three of them. They know how to push each other's buttons, how far to go, when to pull the reins back. I just really get family vibes from the captain's mess or whatever. So,
yeah, absolutely,
yeah,
for sure. And even with Discovery, I think the choice that the crew makes, kind of, one of the things that I don't want to get too deep into like Discovery talk, but because I think there's other times for that, and but watching that show for the first time, one of the things that I kind of did have to wrap my head around was this choice that the crew makes at the end of season 2 to go in large part with Burnham to the future. But when I go back and I rewatch it, I do think that they weave in a lot of tidbits and little pieces of dialogue and little moments throughout the first 2 seasons with that many of these characters come from similar backgrounds to a lot of the Next Generation characters. They have difficult relationships with their families. They don't have that, like they don't have deep bonds with home in a lot of ways. Saru's family is largely gone. His sister's there, and they deal with that. But like he's obviously very much removed from his blood roots. And Mary Wise, Tilly's got a difficult, broken relationship with her mother, and which I think detaches them from the traditional home life enough to where they can envision sticking with their found family and going together to this unknown future.
I like that continuity because I think that's a mark of a Starfleet officer who's on a ship. I think if you're, and this is total headcanon-y stuff. But I think if you're more family oriented, you're on a space station. You're on a You're on a more permanent position. Whereas if you're on a starship, you're one of those people who wants to get out there and explore and do that. So I like that continuity. Yeah, keep going.
Yeah, I think if you're that family oriented to the point, like if you have that such deep connection to your family, I doubt that you maybe Starfleet
or even enlist. Yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
exactly.
You're totally right.
You're going way out into deep space potentially, and you kind of lose agency over your own choices too. Like, yeah, you can ask to get assigned to a space station or a star base close to home, but I don't know that you have that much say over where you go, where they send you, what assignment you get. And I think inherently I think Saru even says that, by just taking the step, being in Starfleet, we kind of have already made the choice to leave our families behind. That choice was made years ago for a lot of these people. So yeah, I think that show has really leaned into that, and I think since they've gone to the future in this season and
just
last
compounded
season, a lot of those themes have really become even more baked in. I think of in season 3, Forget Me Not, they have the another dinner table scene, like Thanksgiving dinner, that kind of goes awry.
Yeah, that was epic. Yeah, that was nice. Yeah.
Dealing
real
with
life stuff,
their trauma and frustrations with each other kind of all come to the surface because they're on edge and tense because of their circumstances and their choice being having to pay for that choice. So there's a lot of family stuff in Discovery. On that front, the found family themes are very, very prominent there now, kind of in a similar way to Voyager, because they have removed themselves from their blood family. I think that's where the connection to Voyager feels the strongest. In that show.
And Lost as well. I think stuff, especially with Book too.
Yes,
he's working through that stuff right now. But I'll point to Lost as well as the Kelvin timeline stuff. I think that feels like a family as well, where especially with loss and traumatic circumstances, I think again adds to that familial aspect.
Definitely. Yeah, I would agree. I think in that version of events, in that different timeline where different things bring those characters together, Kirk and Spock meet at very different points in their life and have different backgrounds, but even through different circumstances, still find each other and build that bond. And this time, I think it's largely through connecting over that sense of loss. Spock losing his home world and his mother, Kirk losing his father, and at birth basically, and never knowing it. Like they both, I think, can connect on that level. And it allows them to overcome the challenges that were there because of the difference in their lives, because of the nature of the Kelvin timeline. They're different people, but they're still able to build that bond through that sense of loss, shared sense of loss. Even some of the other new stuff. I'm not sure you've even seen it, but something as brand new as Prodigy, it deals with a real sense of this found family and kind of building we're only like 5 episodes into that, but I feel that theme it seems to be very much at the forefront of the writing staff's plans for that show and how they're building those characters and their connections with each other. I think that's a definite road that show's going to take.
Yeah, I think that's awesome to hear, because that's the mark of this family theme that we've been talking about, for the last 40 minutes, is the continuity through Star Trek, even from the first show to the newest show. They're still including that in, and I think that's such a pillar in Star Trek, is that family theme, and again, it's not just, it doesn't have to be blood related, it's that found family that Bill has so accurately coined. So, yeah.
Any other things that kind of come to mind as we start to wrap up? Any other moments, any other episodes, movies that you think play on these themes that come to mind as, good examples?
I don't think so. I think there's so many. It's hard to nail down every other one. There's some great stuff with
so many.
Data, where I think working through tough things, I think is also a mark of what family does. So I think there's dozens of examples of characters, not just with Data, but with other characters. It feels like Data grows up a little with these people. Yeah.
I had never thought of that with like the Doctor, the way you were talking about that earlier, that he kind of is in some ways like the child of the show. Like the crew kind of raises him up.
Well, and then Seven comes.
And then same thing.
And then it's kind of like a
sibling thing.
A sibling thing where, So.
But the Data goes through a lot of similar notes as well. I think of Peak Performance when he goes through that crisis of confidence and doesn't beat Kohlrami at that game of Stratagema.
Yeah.
And it takes a bunch of them to come to him and like try to draw him back out into working order. Hart's line about it's possible to make no mistakes and still lose.
Yeah.
That's not fail. That's life. Like, that seems like that's such a classic thing to teach a young person, and the way that the crew kind of rallies around Data, not just in that moment in that episode, but across that show, through these different challenges that he faces, really does play on those themes of dealing with a young person who's learning and growing into their own. I think you're absolutely right. Characters like the Doctor and Seven, especially, I think also kind of follow in those footsteps.
Yeah.
I think it's easy. One thing I kind of fall into the trap of is kind of linking the outsider characters as like a piece. Spock, Odo, Data, the Doctor, Seven, Paul, and what they all do definitely serve the purpose that they all kind of serve on their specific shows is they reflect on humanity, right? Like they allow for somebody to speak about humanity from an outsider's perspective. But they are very different in their own on those levels.
Yeah.
Like, Spock is very like they're not raising Spock. Spock is he doesn't need that. And that's not a theme that's really needed on that character's front. And same with Odo. I mean they have their trials and tribulations and struggles and evolutions, but Data, Seven, and the Doctor kind of share unique DNA. I think on that front.
Yeah.
Jimmy77 mentions a scene. Actually, Sulu describes the family aspect. It's a Tuvok in the episode Flashback.
So good.
He mentions in that. Yeah, he kind of puts that all into words from the perspective of the original series, what it was like serving on the Constitution Enterprise.
Yeah.
His connection to Kirk and company. That's a great call.
Yeah.
Too bad Seven and Data couldn't have shared a scene together. Yeah.
Still could.
True.
Maybe. I don't know.
You never know in Star Trek.
Yeah.
Anything is possible.
Anything is possible. I think we'll wrap it up here. You guys know the drill. The discussion does not have to stop here. Twitter and Discord are the best places to go, especially that this is the last episode of Trek Live this year. So we'll be back in the new year, but we are going to have a Trek Live holiday party, which will be another Trek After Dark, first week of January, I think. So keep your eyes peeled for that. And thanks everybody for watching. And we'll see you guys next year. I love that joke.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good holiday.